Hopefully, Kipsters will be able to solve compound interest problems. Notice these are going to be interest problems, but they are going to be a different type of interest. Today we're going to be talking about compound interest. And in order to focus on compound interest, we first need to understand what compound interest is and what simple interest is in relationship to it. Compound interest, simple interest kind of fits this situation. You know, I put $1,000 in the bank for 3 years. And after 3 years, at the end of 3 years, the bank all at once says, all right, your money's been here for 3 years. This is the interest rate. We're going to take that percentage. We're going to multiply it times the 3 years that are here. They're paying for your service all at once. Compound interest says, well, I gave them $1,000, and a year later, I'm like, hey, you've been borrowing my money for a whole year. You owe me for that. That's a service. I've given it to you. So the bank says, okay, you're right. They give me my money. I leave that money in the bank. So now I've developed some amount of interest. So now I have more than $1,000 in the bank, like $1,010. And so now they're borrowing $1,010 of my dollars, not just 1,000 of my dollars. And so after another year, I go back and I say, hey, you've been using my $1,010 for another year now. That's a service. You owe me for that. The bank says, okay, and they give me another $10 and like 10 cents. I leave that in the bank. Now I've got $10,020.10 in the bank. The bank is now borrowing that $1,000, that $1,020.10. I'm going to leave it in the bank. At the end of year 3, I say, hey, you've been borrowing my $1,020.10 for another year now. That's a service. You owe me for that. So they give me interest for that. I leave it in my bank account. Now they're borrowing more of my money, like $1,040. Okay? And that's the way that compound interest works. It's this idea that you're really just calculating how much interest by saying basically, I'm going back every year and I'm saying, you owe me for this. And they keep it. All right? So compound interest, and the way that we're really going to talk about compound interest is it's interest that is calculated year by year. In many ways, the way that we're going to do this work is going to look a lot like markup problems or double markup problems. Okay? So, I'm sure you have questions. I think after one example, some of those questions may be clarified. A student deposits $250 into a savings account with 4% interest compounded annually. Okay? So this tells us that this is a compound interest problem. If we see that word compound, that tells us that we are going to be dealing with a compound interest problem, which means that we're going to be calculating it instead of all in one fell swoop. We're going to be calculating it year by year. It says how much interest is earned. So the answer is blank dollars of interest is earned, excuse me. I'm going to learn to spell one of these days. Is earned. All right. So when we're looking at this, we're thinking about this again as year by year. We're going to pull out all the information just like we normally would. 4% is our interest rate, and it's left there for 3 years. But then we're not going to calculate it. like simple interest. Simple interest, we would say we'd multiply all of those things together, we'd find the interest, we'd find the total amount. Instead, with compound interest, it's kind of like I go to the back to the bank at the end of each year, and I kind of restart a new problem with them. And so what we're going to do is we're basically going to be creating a table. Year 1, I'm going to have as one line. Year 1, I started with $250. I earned 4% interest. And we're calculating it year by year. So instead of using my time as 3, since I'm only calculating the year as 1 year at a time, I'm going to put the time as 1. So now I'm going to calculate the interest for that first year. This is kind of like I'm going back to the bank at the end of year 1 and I'm saying, hey, let's settle this. Let's take care of this. I've let you borrow my money. You owe me for that service. So I multiply 250 times 0.04. Move the decimal 2 times. I get $10 of interest. So if I were to walk away from the bank that particular day with all of my money, I'd be walking away with $260. But it's kind of like I say, hey, you know what? I'm going to leave that money for you, and you're going to borrow it for another year.
Wait.
Yes?
Well, since you just solved it, can't you just do 10 times 3 now?
I'm going to let you borrow that money for another year. But now, it's not just $250. Now this second year, they're borrowing $260. And our time, again, we're calculating it year by year. So for this second year, the second line is talking about year 2. We're going to be using 1 year. So now I have $260 times 0.04. 0.4, carry the 2.
10.4.
And I earn interest is $10.40. So, at the end of year 2, I'm going to go back to the bank. It's like I go back to the bank and I say, hey, you've been borrowing my $260 for 1 year. That's a service. Give me the interest that you owe me for that service. They added into how much they owe me. I have now $270.40. But once again, I say, you know what? Keep that $270.40 and borrow it for another year. So in year 3, how much money did I start with? What's my principal? $270.40. Our interest rate has not changed. It's still 4%. And since we're talking about compounded annually, I'm still going to calculate year by year, so my time is 1. So now I'm going to multiply $270.40 times 0.04. 0, 6, carry the 1, is 0 plus 1, is 8, carry the 2, is 4, times 2 is 8, plus is 10. I have 1, 2, 3, 4 decimal place values, so I need 1, 2, 3, 4 decimals in my answer. And here, if I want to talk about this being money, I've got too many place values here. So I'm going to look over here at this 6 that's in this thousandths place. I'm going to use that to tell me that I need to round up to $10.82. And So what I'm going to do there is I started the year with $270.40. Now they're paying me the $10.82 of interest they owe me for borrowing my money that year.
Pay attention, stop reading the book. No.
And so I go back to the bank at the end of year 3, and now I have $281.22. If we look at our time, we were only talking about 3 years here. So at the end of year 3, I'm going to walk away with my money. I walk away with $281.22. Now, really quickly, let's just think about what this means. What I'm going to write in red, please do not write on your own.
Yes, sir.
It'll just confuse you when you look back at your notes later. If we had done this with simple interest, we would have had the 250 times 0.04. That was our 10. Times 3 would have told us our interest was $30. And we would have walked away with 250 plus 30 is $280. So there's a difference between how we calculate simple interest and how we calculate compound interest, and it makes a difference in our answer. Basically, the difference is that we are earning interest on our interest. So, in this particular situation, with a raised hand, no. With a kip yes or kip no. No. With an out loud choral answer.
No, they don't handle it right.
At a level 1.5. If this was you and you were depositing money in the bank and you were earning the interest, would you rather have the money calculated simple interest or compound interest? Compound, absolutely. You would walk away with more money. Now let's say it was the situation like a credit card, or you borrowed money and you are paying somebody else the interest. Would you rather have it calculated as compound interest or simple interest? Simple, because obviously you'd be paying less back. Okay? So, going back to this question. This question asks, how much interest does he earn? And this is kind of one of those things. We've done all of this work. I had a professor in college. He was like 80 years old. He said some really funny things sometimes. The one thing that he said that we all thought was hilarious because it sounded very old man of him is he would say, he'd fill up like an entire chalkboard with work for a problem, and then he'd turn around and he'd say, sometimes when fending off alligators, you forget that you went to the swamp to drink. And so what he would mean by that is he would basically be saying, you know, here we are, we're doing all of this work, and then now that we're all done with the work, sometimes we forget, hey, why was I doing this work? What answer was I looking for? Because a lot of times, particular to this problem, you're going to get down to the end, and there's a lot of numbers on this page that you can choose as the answer. Most of you are going to choose this answer as $281.22. However, the question asks, how much interest does the student earn? Is this how much interest they earn? No, that's how much money they walk away with. How can I find out how much interest they earn? There's actually 2 ways to do this. Maria? Absolutely. Way number 1, sit right here. We're going to add up all of the interest. 0 plus 0 plus 2 is 2. 4 plus 8 is 2, carry the 1. 1 plus 0 plus 0 plus 0 is 1. 1 plus 1 plus 1 is 3. $31.22. That is one way. He earned, over those 3 years, $31.22. Somebody with a raised hand. What is another way I could have gone about finding out how much interest? Kyrie, what do you think?
Maybe you can multiply 0.04 times 81.281.23.
I think you're on the right track looking at that final answer. Sage, what do you think? Subtract the total amounts. Okay, now we're getting really, really close. We hear Kyrie talking about dealing with our final amount. We hear Sage talking about subtraction. Let's just make sure that we're subtracting the right things. What's going to tell us how interest is how much it changed from the beginning to the end? How am I going to find out how much it changed from the beginning to the end? Judea?
Add all of the $10 and the change.
Which is what we already did. We added up all the interest already. That was way number 1. Sonny, what do you think?
We take the final amount and then we take the final amount and then we subtract the original.
Yeah, so we can look at how much we ended with and how much we started with, and anything that was added on is all interest. So we could have said we ended with $281.22. We started with $250. So in those 3 years, if we subtract here, $31.22 was added on. That was all interest. Either way is totally exceptional way to do it. You can choose. Some people, in fact, most people find adding to be easier than subtracting. However, if you get to the point where you are calculating over like 8 years, subtracting 2 numbers is probably a lot easier than adding 8 numbers. So from problem to problem, you may choose different ways to go ahead and find out that if it asks you for how much interest they earn. Okay? Questions about this problem thus far? Kyrie.
Okay, what if somebody got a loan from the bank, but the bank used their money in the account for something? So wouldn't they get paid interest plus they'd have to pay interest? So how would you do that?
Ask your question one more time, because I think that you're representing a situation that doesn't actually happen. So ask your question one more time. Okay. Judea?
So we're basically doing the problem how many ever the time is and then adding all of the interest.
Yeah, so in this particular problem, Judea is summarizing and saying we're calculating the interest year by year, and because it's asking us how much interest, we're adding all of that interest together to find out how much total interest. Kyrie.
Okay, is there ever going to be a time that we're going to have where interest is added? Oh, okay, I don't know how to explain.
Okay, let's move on. Next problem. It says a student invests $300 into a savings account at 5% compound interest. Compound interest. So one thing that is going to be most common on your test tomorrow and on the CST is that they will throw a compound interest problem in there. If you don't read the word compound because you don't read the problem carefully and you just immediately start just throwing answers and work on the paper, you're going to miss the problem completely. If you solve a compound interest problem using the simple interest method, you will earn 0 credit. And it's all about reading one word and recognizing what that one word means. Don't fall into that trap. So this is a compound interest problem. After 4 years, what is the total amount of money in the account, including the interest? So this one says, what is, or I don't want to rewrite the question. The total amount is blank dollars. All right, so this is a compound interest problem, which means we're going to go ahead and pull out our information as we normally would, just so we've got it all in one place. We're looking at 5% interest rate, and the time is 4 years. So how many different lines of work am I going to have here?
4.
4, one for each year. So we're going to have our table going here, P times R times T, I and total amount. And you said we're going to have 4 lines. I can actually already start filling out some of this information. What am I going to use as the time for all 4 lines? 1. Compound interest calculated year by year. What is going to be my interest rate every year?
1. No.
My interest rate.
No.
5%.
5%.
5%, 0.05. So I can actually go ahead and fill that out for every year. The rest of it we're going to have to wait on, because we don't know what it is at the beginning of each year. So for year 1, I start with $300. And feel free, if it works for spacing for you, we're actually not going to end up doing this last problem.
Huh? Oh, okay.
So if you need that space to do some calculation, feel free to use that space for that. We have 300 times 0.05. 0.0051, 2 times. My interest in the first year that I earn is $15, which means at the end of year 1, if I went back to the bank, I would have $315. Now, if I put that money back in to year 2, and this is one thing that I say, basically once you're starting a new line, it's kind of like nothing else matters. Okay? It's kind of like we're starting a new problem now for year 2. Year 2, $315 times 0.05. It's going to be $5, or 5 times 5 is 25, carry the 2. It's going to be 7, 5 times 3 is 15. And so my interest in year 2 is $15.75. So again, thinking about this like it was a new problem, some people get confused and they start trying to add the $15.75 to like the original $300. That's not where you started this year. You started this year at $315. Okay? So what we're going to do is we're going to add that $315 that we started with, plus the $15.75 of interest that we earned this year. Tells me that at the end of year 2, if I were to walk away from the bank at the end of year 2, I would have $330.75. Which means as I begin year 3, I've got $330.75. And I've got a new problem for this year. $330.75 times 5%. 5, carry the 2 is 7, carry the 3 is 3. 5 times 3 is 15. 5, carry the 1. And 5 times 3 is 16. 1, 2 times, 1, 2 times, 1, 2, 3, 4. And I'm going to need to round here. I'm looking at this 7. That means I'm going to round up to $16.54. And because I started the year with $330.75, and I was given $16.54 more of interest at the end of the year,
$346.54.
make sure you carry that 1. We're going to get that we end the year with $347.29.
Oh.
And finally, we get to year 4, our last and final year that we're going to leave the money in the bank. We started with $347.29. And we had 5% of interest that year. 5 carry the 4. 4 carry the 1. 6 carry the 3. 5 would be 3 carry the 2. and 17. So I move my decimal 1, 2, 3, 4 times. I'm going to be looking over here to round. I have a 4, so I'm going to round down
35.
to $17.36.
It's already 36. It's 35. Okay. It's not 37. It's already 36.
Remember, when you round down, you're not subtracting, you're going to the nearest cent. So this is somewhere between 36 cents and 37 cents. So we're going down to the 36 cents. And so what we end up with is our $347.29 plus the interest that was given to us at the end of that year. It's 5, carry the 1, 6, 4, carry the 1, 6, and I get $364.65. Now, again, as my professor would say, you need to remember that we came to the swamp to drink. What is this question actually asking us?
What is the interest?
No, this particular question is asking us what is the total amount of money in the account.
Oh, so you gotta add it to the...
So what is the total amount of money that's in this account when we walk away at year 4?
You tell me.
Viviana. Right, this one's easy. $364.65. At the end of year 4, we walk away. A lot of you want to get into this problem and you want to add up all the total amounts. Not adding up all the total amounts. Those were just checkpoints along the way. Okay, this is what we end with. $364.65. Questions? Kyrie. Questions before we move on to key points. Sage.
I thought we subtract 364.65.
And that's where we've got to make sure that we're thinking about what the question is asking us. In that previous question, it asked us for how much interest was earned. How much interest did he earn? And over here, it's asking us what the total amount is in the account. Yeah, so if it's asking you what do you have, how much money do you have at the end, you're not subtracting. You're just taking that last total amount. Okay? Good question. Kyrie, key point.
Compound interest is calculated year by year.
Perfect. Right here. We already have it. And honestly, that's the only key point that I really would like to have today, because otherwise we're basically going to be writing out a long narrative about how we set up a table and things like that. If you remember that you have to calculate it year by year, then you should be fine. It's very much like those double markup problems or those double discount problems. Any questions before we move forward?
This is hard.
Judea.
No, I got one more key point.
Judea thinks she has one more key point, so let's listen to it.
When you are asked to find the total amount, add all the interest to the original one, like the one that you first started off with.
So what I'm hearing Judea say is you need to make sure that you pay attention in the end to what the question is asking you. So I might write down for my key point today, sometimes when fending off alligators,
What?
alligators, you forget that you came to the swamp to drink.
That's suspended.
Swamp.
Together.
And that should just be a reminder to you, that story that I said, yes, you do all this work, but when you get to the end, you need to remember that you came there for a reason, you did all that work, you need to answer the actual question rather than just randomly picking a number that you see somewhere on the page and boxing it in. I did not. It's right there. You can't see the I. Right.
Oh,
Okay.